But now we have a situation where tariffs are the talk of a lot of people's economics, whether it be their, 401ks or looking at buying gold. And I'm just wondering.
Rick Harrison has built an empire from old coins, dusty antiques, and the drama of Pawn Stars. But behind the glitz of Las Vegas and the cameras of reality TV, storm clouds have been gathering. From heartbreaking personal loss to business controversies and legal battles, Rick's once solid world is starting to look fragile. How did the man who turned a pawn shop into a global phenomenon end up here? And more importantly, what does this mean for the future of Pawn Stars? For years, Rick Harrison was the face of success in reality television. The gold and silver pawn shop wasn't just a business, it was a pop culture landmark, drawing fans from across the world. With Pawn Stars airing in over 150 countries, Rick went from being a Las Vegas businessman to a household name. But as the spotlight grew, so did the challenges. Rick has faced tragedy in his personal life, criticism about his business practices, and questions about whether Pawn Stars can survive without its original charm. And now, at 58, the cracks are beginning to show more clearly than ever. Let's break down the truth behind the struggles Rick Harrison faces today, from personal heartbreak to the uncertain road ahead. The heavy burden of loss. Perhaps the most devastating blow in Rick's recent years was the loss of his son, Adam Harrison, at just 39 years old. News of Adam's sudden death shocked fans and cast a shadow over Rick's usually strong exterior. Adam wasn't part of Pawn Stars, but he was Rick's flesh and blood. Losing a child is a pain no parent should ever endure. And for Rick, it created a wound far deeper than any business setback. While cameras rolled at the pawn shop, Rick's private grief became something he couldn't simply negotiate away. Fans who met him in the shop or at events noticed the weight he carried. For the first time, the man who seemed unshakable looked vulnerable. Could Rick continue to lead an empire while carrying such unimaginable heartbreak? Pawn Stars. Without its stars. Pawn Stars has always been more than just a show about objects. It's about people. Rick, his father, Old Man, Richard Harrison, Corey, and of course Chum Lee. But with time, that lineup has changed. The death of Richard Old Man Harrison in 2018 was another devastating moment, both for Rick personally and for the show's dynamic. His father's gruff humor and wisdom gave Pawn Stars its heart, and his absence left a hole that could never really be filled. At the same time, Chum Lee, once the comic relief, has faced multiple legal troubles, casting shadows over the show's reputation. And Corey Harrison, Rick's son, has often hinted at frustrations with the family business. All of this raises an uncomfortable question. Without its original cast at full strength, can Pawn Stars keep audiences hooked? Or has the magic of the gold and silver pawn shop already faded? Financial storm clouds. On the surface, Rick Harrison is a man surrounded by success. The pawn shop is still open, the TV show continues to air, and his face is instantly recognizable to millions around the world. But peel back the glossy image and you'll find serious financial turbulence. In recent years, Rick has been dragged into lawsuits involving everything from business contracts to real estate disputes. One particularly messy case involved allegations of unpaid debts and mismanaged finances within ventures connected to the pawn shop brand. While Rick has always denied wrongdoing, the court documents and headlines painted a picture of a man under increasing financial pressure. Fans began to question how someone so savvy on television could be caught in such tangled money problems behind the scenes. It wasn't just lawsuits either. The pawn shop itself, once a tourist mecca, faced declining foot traffic, partly because of the rise of online reselling platforms like eBay, and partly because the novelty of Pawn Stars began to fade. Where once lines of fans stretched down the block, visitors now found a quieter store. The empire Rick built suddenly looked fragile, and critics asked the obvious. Had Rick overextended himself, building an image bigger than the reality of his business? But here's the bigger question. If the financial cracks continue to widen, how long before Rick's empire collapses entirely? The battle to keep the brand alive. When Pawn Stars first launched in 2009, it was an instant hit. Rick's sharp negotiations, his encyclopedic knowledge of history, and the chemistry with his father and crew gave audiences something unique. But by now, nearly 15 years later, the reality TV landscape has shifted dramatically. New shows, streaming services, and changing audience habits have chipped away at the cultural dominance Pawn Stars once enjoyed. The series still has loyal fans, but its ratings are no longer what they once were. And that presents Rick with a serious dilemma. How do you keep a brand alive when its original spark is gone? Rick has tried branching out. He's leaned into merchandise, personal appearances, and even spin-offs. But none of these ventures have matched the original magic of the pawn shop. Worse still, younger audiences, who now drive much of the entertainment market, don't feel the same attachment to the show. For them, Pawn Stars is a relic of an earlier era of television. And then there's the human factor. With the old man gone, Chumley's troubles, and Corey's lukewarm involvement, Rick himself shoulders the responsibility of carrying the brand. At times, it seems like he's holding the weight of the entire show on his own. So the question becomes, is Rick fighting to keep the brand alive for the fans? Or is he desperately trying to keep himself relevant in an industry that has already moved on? Personal controversies. Rick Harrison has never shied away from the spotlight. For years, fans admired his confidence, his shrewd deals, and his ability to balance family with business. But as Pawn Stars grew, so did the scrutiny. And with that came controversies that hit closer to home. One of the most public disputes involved his late mother, who filed a lawsuit claiming she had been cheated out of assets belonging to the gold and silver pawn shop. The case made headlines, painting an ugly picture of family conflict in a business that once appeared united. While Rick fought back in court, the story left many fans unsettled. After all, if Rick couldn't keep peace within his own family, what did that say about the empire he built? Adding to the strain were rumors about Rick's personal relationships. Multiple divorces and stories of turbulent romances fueled gossip that his personal life was just as complicated as his professional one. Each headline chipped away at the carefully curated image of Rick as the unflappable pawn boss. For a man who built his career on being perceived as trustworthy and knowledgeable, these controversies became more than embarrassing. They were damaging to his reputation. And in today's media climate, where perception often outweighs reality, Rick found himself increasingly on the defensive. So the question is, can Rick Harrison ever repair the cracks in his personal image, or has the damage gone too far for fans to forget? The shifting public perception. When Pawn Stars debuted, Rick was celebrated as a symbol of the American dream, a hard-working businessman who turned a small pawn shop into a cultural juggernaut. But in recent years, the narrative around him has shifted. And not in his favor. Fans who once lined up outside the gold and silver pawn shop began to voice frustrations. Some accused Rick of being greedy, pointing to rising prices on memorabilia and merchandise. Others complained that the shop itself felt less like a real pawn business and more like a tourist trap, designed to cash in on fame rather than serve everyday people. On social media, the tone grew harsher. Threads about Rick often devolved into debates. Was he a savvy businessman who deserved his success, or had he sold out, prioritizing profits over authenticity? Even within the show, Rick's persona began to shift. What once came across as confidence started to feel like arrogance to some viewers. His quick dismissals, his blunt negotiation tactics, traits that had once been entertaining, were now being read as signs of a man out of touch with the very audience that made him famous. The reality is simple. Public perception is everything. And while Rick may still command respect from longtime fans, the tide of opinion has been turning against him. The looming question is this: will Rick be able to adapt and win back his audience, or is the decline of his reputation unstoppable? Health concerns and the weight of stress. Behind Rick Harrison's trademark grin and quick-witted banter lies a man who has carried an extraordinary amount of stress. Running a world-famous pawn shop, managing a hit reality show, navigating lawsuits, and enduring personal tragedies, it all takes a toll. Fans have noticed Rick appearing more worn in recent years. His weight has fluctuated, and while he continues to work hard, there are whispers about the toll this lifestyle is taking on his health. The long filming schedules, combined with the pressures of maintaining the pawn shop's global reputation, have raised concerns about burnout. Rick himself has hinted at the difficulty of balancing everything. In interviews, he has admitted that the fame brought by Pawn Stars wasn't always easy to handle. Being recognized everywhere he goes, managing constant attention, and juggling business ventures left little room for rest or recovery. And while Rick hasn't publicly confirmed any serious health issues, fans worry that the combination of stress, grief, and relentless pressure could one day push him beyond his limits. After all, we've seen it before. Celebrities and entrepreneurs who seemed unstoppable suddenly slowed down, often with devastating consequences. The question becomes, can Rick continue to shoulder the weight of his empire, or will his health eventually force him to step back? The uncertain future of Pawn Stars. When Pawn Stars launched, it was fresh, funny, and full of personality. But after more than a decade on the air, cracks are beginning to show in the formula. Ratings, while steady, are nowhere near the peak years. Younger viewers have turned to platforms like YouTube and TikTok for fast-paced content, leaving traditional reality TV shows struggling to stay relevant. Even longtime fans admit the show feels repetitive at times. How many rare coins or Civil War artifacts can one audience care about? Behind the scenes, the situation is even more uncertain. With the loss of the old man, Chumley's legal troubles, and Corey's half-hearted involvement, Pawn Stars feels less like a family enterprise and more like a business desperately trying to keep its brand afloat. Rick may be the face of the show, but he can't carry it alone forever. There's also the question of legacy. Does Rick want Pawn Stars to end with dignity, remembered as a beloved piece of pop culture history? Or will the show continue to limp along until it fades from relevance entirely? The future is murky, and for the first time since the show's debut, Rick Harrison isn't the one holding all the cards. So what comes next for Rick? A bold reinvention or a slow decline into obscurity? The Pawn King at a crossroads. Rick Harrison's journey has been anything but ordinary. From a small pawn shop in Las Vegas to global television fame, he built an empire that inspired millions. But behind the glitz of Pawn Stars lies a story of heartbreak, controversy, and an uncertain future. The loss of loved ones, the weight of lawsuits, the decline of ratings, and the mounting stress of carrying it all? These are battles no reality show can fully capture. And while Rick has always been the man who could strike a deal, charm a crowd, and outsmart anyone across the counter, life itself isn't a negotiation he can control. So where does this leave Rick Harrison today? At a crossroads. One path leads to reinvention, a chance to adapt, rebuild trust, and secure his legacy. The other risks watching the empire he built slowly unravel, piece by piece. And maybe that's what makes this story so heartbreaking. The man who made a living buying and selling other people's treasures is now fighting to hold on to his own. But what do you think? Can Rick Harrison find a way to turn things around, or has the golden age of Pawn Stars already come to an end? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget, hit like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you won't miss our next deep dive into the untold stories behind fame, fortune, and the struggles no one wants to talk about. Because in the end, even the biggest stars can face the toughest battles.